The developer of the PrizmaL bots is back with a new EA, the PrizmaL Scalper. Let's dive in to see how this one is different than his other bots, including the best-selling PrizmaL Gold, and get to know a bit more about the strategy. This video is sponsored by Prosperity Algo and our free Golden Time Bomb Expert Advisor. Do you want to make 100+% annual returns through automating the London breakout and the opening range breakout? Then click the link in the description. So this gent, Mr. Vladimir, seemingly came out of nowhere a few months ago and has been making a really big splash on the MQL5 marketplace. Many of his bots are now on the front page selling hundreds of copies a month at very high prices. And when this gentleman first came back, I had heard that he had previously been a pretty active developer on the MQL5 space, but he took a break for a few years, I think maybe to refine his strategies and because some of his previous bots had maybe not performed how some users were expecting. But essentially, it's interesting to kind of see his approach because some of the bots, there seems to be a bit of funny business in regards to the signals, using more of a custom broker like a fintech company. But then at the same time, people have been rather pleased with some of his latest additions. So there's definitely pros and cons, both people who are big supporters as well as dissenters. And that always makes for an interesting review because we're able to kind of go a bit more deeper and see if there's a real strategy here or if there's perhaps a bit of manipulation or funny business going on. So getting into the actual bot, we can look here on the sales page and see that this is indeed a gold trading scalper. There's not a ton of information here in regards to the exact strategy it uses, but some of the interesting things that we can see is that it requires a hedging account, and he's saying that it does require ideally very low spreads, and he's recommending groups like IC Markets and IC Trading. And he's not actually saying a ton in regards to the strategy which it's using specifically, except that it's doing speculative trading in the spot gold market. And essentially all of this, like forex trading, is speculative trading, or at least generally. Therefore, yeah, that's not really telling us too much. And here now, if we go to the live signal of the PrizmaL Scalper, we can see that it's only been trading, or it's primarily been trading with a fixed lot size. And that's kind of interesting because I would expect to see more aggressive lot scaling here because he's mentioning hedging. And if you look at the actual signal itself, or if you look at the bot itself running in MetaTrader, it seems to be taking more of a grid martingale approach. So the fact that the signal is not showing lot scaling, but there is more of a grid martingale approach and back testing is kind of weird. At the same time, we're seeing these massive clusters of trades here, and many are happening at the same time on the same day. And that's also a little bit odd. So it's almost like he's manufacturing a ton of trades to rapidly build a long track record. One final thing to note here is he's still using this Leverate company. And if you Google Leverate, it's not a broker, it's a fintech provider. So they essentially give you the technology to use a brokerage account. They give you the technology to build a white label broker on top of. And in my last video, I actually criticized him for this as well when I did the PrizmaL Gold. And then a few days later, he had a bunch of Blueberry Markets live accounts set up specifically for this. So I'm not so sure if he watches my videos, not to give myself too much credit, but maybe we'll also see a real Blueberry signal coming up shortly for this bot too. But at the moment, I would be a bit skeptical about this because there's so many big brokers out there. Why you would use a white label provider of brokerages is a bit odd and it might speak to the ability to manipulate the signals. As well as if we go back to the final page here, we can see that it's only been running for a few months. And if we look at the actual statistics, they're very positive. Arguably, it would seem to be, if not a 1-to-1 risk reward, but yeah, slightly inverted risk reward, roughly a 1-to-2, but with a 80% win rate. So looking very solid there. The one thing which is kind of standing out to me here is just the sheer massive amount of trades on a given day and the fact that we're not seeing any sort of aggressive lot scaling, which is not consistent with the type of strategy I think this is. And to explain that in more detail is if we run a backtest here, if this was an honest grid martingale on gold, that would perhaps be fine. But what we're seeing is that there is some degree of lot scaling, or it looks like there's some degree of lot scaling, or perhaps just not closing trades. I think I know what's happening. If we go here and we look at, it's doing a nice trick. sometimes instead of actually scaling the lots, it will just scale the positions. So if price starts to go against you, it will just start opening an absolute like boatload of trades. And I think that's what's happening here. Yeah, so this actually does kind of tie into, this makes a lot more sense. So it does tie into the live signal as well. So instead of like aggressively scaling lot size, what these bots will typically do, it will just start opening like an absolute boatload of trades. And that's kind of what we're seeing here too. So it's essentially scaling in just by opening a ton of trades. And so here it is like a grid martingale, as you guys can see. Like there is a degree of grid happening, but at the same time, it's not scaling lot size by scaling lot size. It's scaling lot size by adding trades. So this kind of does speak to what we're seeing here. And it would actually show why we're taking so many trades in a given day and why the lot size is not being is not scaling all that aggressively. So effectively, part of my scrolling too, let me see if I can go to a higher time frame. You can see these massive clusters of trades. And it's almost like a take on a grid martingale, because we're seeing here the detachment of the equity from the balance, and we see these big drops. So it's like effectively a take on a grid martingale. So that's actually a rather interesting approach. I have seen it done before in the past too. So a couple points about this type of strategy. You're still applying a martingale-esque style system on gold, which is usually not a great idea just because of how volatile gold is and how quickly it can move. These also do appear to be more of a mean reversion type entry. Would make sense because you typically need that for more of a grid martingale style system. Like it's mean reversion but waiting for the turn. So up here, kind of waiting for the turn. And effectively, like the issue with that with gold is because it trends so strongly, sometimes a really powerful trend can go against you, quite often actually, and this can cause some pretty significant losses. What we are seeing here though is he does appear to have some good equity stop losses built in, and that's actually a really smart thing to do when you are trading any sort of this type of system. Because here we have risk level, so 1 to 40, and I venture that he does have a drawdown limiter. So here we go. You would be able to essentially control what your drawdown would be. So that is a very good sign. And if you have if you have this type of bot, that is essentially required, or else you're going to massively, massively risk your account. So from what I can see so far, mean reversion style system, it is trading gold. There is some degree of martingale lot scaling, but at the same time, he's doing so more through just adding additional positions. The red flags for me are that he's still not using a real broker, and he's just having so many trades that this is going to be incredibly broker sensitive and incredibly slippage sensitive. Essentially, as next steps, I would wait to see if he publishes a signal from a real broker and if this thing can survive for 3 months. I'd be a bit skeptical just based on the fact that he's launching so many bots so quickly, and also at the same time that there doesn't appear to be an overly long track record for this. But there is still a real strategy here. It's not a history reader. It's not a blatant scam. So I have to give the gentleman some credit for that too. So real strategy, but high risk, and really the best thing to do would be to wait and see if it is actually sustainable in the current market environment. Guys, hope you enjoyed my video. Leave me a comment if I missed something. I know there's a big fan base of some of this guy's stuff. So if you're angry at me, leave me a comment and let me know if I missed something. Take care. Have a great day.